My dear Bagginses and Buffins.
By the blood of our people, are your lands kept safe?
I see in your eyes the same fear that will take the heart of me.
So do all who live to see such times.
By all that you hold dear, this good earth.
There's some good in this earth, and it's worth fighting.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are talking about Rings of Power, Season 1, Episode 8, Revisited. It is just me for this final episode, and, this episode has, I guess, some of the better plot developments to it, but at the same time, some of the most silly and laughable elements to it. And I guess we will start with Sexy Sauron. We all called this just because of how they chose to portray the mystery. So Halbrand, this hot dude, he's the Dark Lord we've been seeking after, and he's going to try and corrupt Galadriel one last time. Again, weird that he didn't let her kill Adar, thus helping her become more corrupted so that this might actually work. I am not going to just harp on dialogue all the time, because that gets boring for me. I know maybe some people love it when I point out how things sound bad. But to me, this show can still work without the amazing dialogue from Tolkien or Peter Jackson. As much as I think that dialogue is phenomenal from the original trilogy, which is largely ripped right from Tolkien himself. But the show can still work. It can still present a decent fantasy show with great messaging, but it has to make sense. And Sauron, okay, a lot of shows have this problem where they make their villains likable in some way. Here, he hasn't done anything evil, and it's just because he's Sauron. Now, obviously, in the past he's done things evil, but we haven't even seen the character do that, even when no one's watching. He legitimately seemed like he wanted to become a blacksmith in Numenor. That didn't work out. Then he was going to become the king of the Southlands, and only reluctantly, though. Which, again, great acting. He didn't want to make it seem he wanted it too bad. He straight up hid this fact that he was wearing a pendant that supposedly shows that he's the rightful king, even though he clearly isn't. And the story he told us, he stole it from some dead guy. Probably true. Probably killed him. But again, we don't see any of that. And then now we're supposed to be like, oh, this guy is a villain, and don't do it, Galadriel. Don't do it. She has been bad the entire show, not acting wise. Like, her character is not good. We don't like her. Nobody likes her. Even if you're fully on board with the show, they don't want you to like her. That's the point of her character. She's got to grow as a character and become the Galadriel, the fairest and wisest of all the elves. She has to become that. She doesn't start out that way. So, great, I get it. But then, make it make sense. So, Sauron tries to not corrupt her at any moment during their journey. And now he's like, come be with me. I killed your brother. Oh well, I guess. Just come be with me. She's not gonna do that, my dude. And she hasn't been corrupted by you. You haven't been whispering in her ear and slowly getting her to see the world through your lens. I don't understand why these characters act the way they do, and that's what's frustrating. Game of Thrones, the reason people love it is even when they they bring in a massive shock value moment. Everything makes sense in hindsight. It all adds up, and on a rewatch, you can look at it and say, oh, I missed that subtle clue about what's happening here. You can't do that with this show. The whole point of this revisit was to see if maybe you could and we were just being too hard. You cannot. None of this makes sense. The character motivations don't make sense. And ultimately, that is a bad show. Don't listen to these other crazies that are talking about nothing and nonsense about why this show is bad. The show is bad because the writing, they were trying way too hard to make a mystery similar to the first season of Game of Thrones, but they forgot that character motivations help sell the mystery. And none of these characters have consistent motivations. The only ones that do are my favorites, like Elrond, Durin, and Elendil. Nobody else seems to have a consistent motivation. Not the Queen of Numenor or Queen Regent of Numenor, not the Harfoots. I guess the Stranger does, but the Stranger has no dialogue. No, nothing. He just wants to know who he is and what's going on. So that's his motivation. I guess he's consistent. But everyone else, from Celebrimbor to, during the fourth, or during the third, I should say, to actually even during the third has his issues. But so it's mostly Elrond and Elendil. Interesting that they're somewhat related. And everyone else is not great. Yeah, Waldrig, maybe he's good. And you know what? Theo, he's a troubled kid. He can have changing motivations, okay? He can be upset at the elves for how they treated the human population in the Southlands and want to lash out and break the rules, and then get too deep down the rabbit hole, get scared of it, and walk it back. He can do all that. That's fine. You can have characters like that. So Theo actually kind of works. But the rest of them, they just randomly do stuff. And like, I'm looking back at some of these scenes from other episodes, and now in double hindsight, after seeing this show fully multiple times, but just recently, before season 2, seeing in its full first season, there are so many question marks about why things happened. And not everything needs to be explained. But the characters cannot be tricking the audience every step of the way as if they know they're being watched by an invisible audience. That's where you get those looks into the mind of a character that really tell you something. And even when you never get them alone, like Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, you get moments of honesty because his character has an arrogance, ego problem. He does reveal himself through his jabs and gestures, through how he talks about things. And then other characters reveal things about him. And it goes back and forth. And that's so good. That's why people love that part of Game of Thrones. You could do that here. I talked about this before, but Sauron not trying to corrupt Numenor. Just having him skulking around a little bit, whispering in people's ears. The only things he does is he tells Pharazôn how to find and get Galadriel. He then tells Galadriel how to not be so arrogant in front of the Queen Regent. Both of those things he shouldn't have done. There was no benefit to him. He was in jail for starting a fight at this point. He could have been trying to get himself out of jail through some sneaky means, but no. He was just going to stay in jail and hope to become a blacksmith. Like, was he really just going to do that and sit there and do that? Or was he actually going to do something in Numenor? Like, was his plan the whole time to get out of Numenor, to get to Lindon, because he's read the appendices or he's read the Silmarillion? No, that doesn't make sense. He needs to, in the moment, be trying to do things. He cannot just be along for the ride. This is Sauron. Now that we've revealed it, this is Sauron. He's been along for the ride the entire time. It's not good enough. This character needed to be like a Littlefinger. He needed to be like a Tywin, maybe. Like, he needed to have a presence in some capacity. And I'm not faulting the actor. I actually think the actor's doing a great job with what he's given. I think when you he has a personality that works for Halbrand. It'll be interesting to see him now go full Sauron, because we see Sauron here. We do see him tap into it, but it's more like he's still trying to bring some of the Halbrand charm with it when he's talking to Galadriel. He's not a Dark Lord or anything like that in that moment. He's trying to get her to see his vision and that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if he can go full Sauron and really show the mind of this Dark Lord who is trying to control all of Middle-earth. Because right now he's a charming character as Halbrand, but he could have been doing a lot more. So that's my big issue is with, this is Sauron, and this is why I didn't want Halbrand to be Sauron. Back in the day, if you watched the original video, I was like, please don't be Sauron. But he is Sauron, and it's because the way they tried to hide it using plot holes, quite frankly, is bad writing. It's what it is, bad writing. And we already established a bad dialogue, and now we've got bad writing in terms of plot and character motivation and consistency. So we are starting to get to the big question about these rings. We've already been following the elves for this time, and they are trying to stay on Middle-earth, and they need some way to keep their essence, their beings, part of this realm. And their initial thought is we'll use Mithril, but that falls through with the dwarves, which again, I'm okay with this sometimes when it actually leads to something, which it does here, so I won't harp on it too much. Just the way they've done this is a little much, because they first make Mithril this magic item that can save the elves. Okay, great. You've changed the lore, but I don't care about that as much. I'm here for the visual representation of Middle-earth, not necessarily the word for word of Tolkien, even though it's great books. So here's Mithril. It's gonna save the elves. The dwarves say no. Now, I think this is a great opportunity. They kind of want to lean into the elves being bad type trope, which I like. People have joked about this before, and I kind of think the writers almost overplayed it a bit. Like, the way they do it with Elrond is great. It's this lack of empathy. He doesn't quite understand what it's like to be mortal. They then play it a little bit too much with the rest of the elves, where they just don't care, it seems, about, at least Elrond cared and just was unaware of his mistakes. Some of the elves seem like they straight up don't care about anyone else. Which is like, okay, why are you here, guarding Middle-earth? But anyway. So, okay, the elves are kind of not the nicest of races. This could be a perfect time to have almost an internal debate among the elves as a collective. Do we take Mithril by force if need be? We sent in Elrond. He did his best, and maybe this allows Elrond to rise through the ranks as a politician and try to talk them down, because he doesn't want to go to war with his best friend. And I think that's a great place to take the elves, if that's how you want to see the elves, and that's the story you want to tell about the elves, that they are kind of a cold, uncaring race because of their almost godlike abilities among the other mortals. That would be a way to really dive into that. They don't go in that route, though. Instead, the elves just kind of mope about, like, oh, well, what was me? What are we going to do? And Halbrand kind of helps a little bit with how to forge these rings. Galadriel comes up with a plan, which is you need these 3 magic rings to hold all of Elven, I guess, immortality and spirituality in this plane. The magic doesn't matter. The magic, I just want to say this, the magic doesn't matter to me. This is definitely a MacGuffin, and it's fine. In fantasy, you can get away oftentimes with having just magic stuff happens, and this has to happen this way. And a lot of times you can suspend your disbelief for that. I've talked about this before with that sword that did Mount Doom. I didn't really like that design because it does make you question it. But here you can just say, no, there's some ancient teaching that 3 rings are the way to go, that she's discovered or that she's pieced together. Whatever. That, to me, I'm fine with that. And people are going to say that's hypocritical. No, I think there are varying degrees. There's going to be a line at some point, but when you cross it, it's hard to come back from a disbelief perspective. And so I think these, I mean, heck, the sword isn't even quite crossing that line for me. I didn't like it. It's right up abutting that line, but I'll go with it. The rings to me are fine. They don't cross that line at all, whereas the dagger in Star Wars does. Once you show me that dagger and explain what it's doing, I'm out. I don't like it. The story seems dumb to me. The whole thing seems contrived, and the people didn't take time to craft it very well. And then what that does is means all of the morals, all of the thought-provoking moments and character growth, all of that is lost once that happens, and that's a shame. That one oversight can ruin what might be great performances, great dialogue even, but you throw in that plot wrench like that, and it's off. And that happens for people even in the original trilogy. I think they're crazy. I don't think the evils are a plot hole. I don't think... heck, I mean, even the scene where Aragorn saves Wormtongue, I don't think that's a problem. I disagree with the character there, but that is consistent with Aragorn. Aragorn is that person. So it works, even though I think it's dumb for them to have listened to him. They did. Whereas here, we're starting to get close to it. We definitely get close to it with the sword, but I'm okay with the rings. So, they're going to make these rings, and these 3 rings will keep the elves in this plane. I guess. I mean, I don't know why Celebrimbor needs help from Hal. Okay, here's another thing. Celebrimbor is like this famed elvish smith, and he's like a celebrity. And then along comes a human man from their perspective, right? A human man. So imagine Boromir in the original trilogy, walking up to Elrond, walking in to Rivendell, and just start straight up teaching them things. It doesn't make sense. Now, I get what they're trying to show, that he's more than meets the eye. But then you can't have it be like this. You have to have... Okay, if you're gonna do this, you have to do it subtly. Where it's like, oh, this guy knows more than he's letting on. Instead, it's straight up, here is Halbrand, who we already know is a smith. You don't even need to reestablish that. We already know it from Numenor, right? We already put that in Numenor. We don't need to do it here. You could do other things here that show that he knows more about elf history, about, elf culture, about the wars that happened before he was supposedly born. All these things you could have him have insight on, and that would start to be like, oh, whoa, this guy, what's up with this dude? But no, he just straight up helps Celebrimbor figure out some stuff with smithing. Yeah, to me, that's kind of silly. But we're kind of rushing this last episode anyway. We should have actually had this happen over multiple episodes because there's a lot here. I mean, heck, they even got Halbrand here really quickly. And then, yeah, Galadriel figures out that Halbrand is Sauron. That's kind of also a bit of a weird one. It's not terrible. Again, it's rushed. Like, this whole episode is rushed. So, like, it is what it is. That's what's going to happen. Now, we also get some interesting thoughts on the stranger. So we've got this group trying to... They think the stranger is Sauron, and that the meteor was him being cast out of the volcano or of Morgoth or something. I don't really know, but they think it's Sauron, and they're gonna try to give him back his memories. And then their plan is foiled by a couple of Harfoots. I mean, I know they don't do a great job, but I'm still shocked at how well they do. So, but they shout he's an Astari, and so that means he's a wizard. And now we all think it's Gandalf, and again, lore-wise, lore is out the window at this point. But if you want to start arguing lore about this, it's very convoluted, and it's not even quite clear. There's a few lines that suggest it can't be Gandalf if you want to go hard on the lore. Because Gandalf was the last to arrive, but some people argue it doesn't say anything that he hasn't been there before. Yada yada yada. I hope it's not Gandalf. I do hope it is a blue wizard. There's 2 blue wizards. We don't know anything about them. I think it'd be better for it to be a blue wizard. I think we have enough characters that are already in the original trilogy, and that's enough that they have a hard job to bring these characters home to make them fit who we see in, well, both the Hobbit movies, but really it's the original trilogy. That's what I need them to get to. And if this is Gandalf, now you've got 3, maybe 4, if you count Isildur, trying to get them to become their characters. That's a lot. So I hope it's a blue wizard. But yeah, so Nori's gonna go with the wizard, and Sauron is run out of town, makes his way all the way back to Mount Doom, and Galadriel doesn't want anyone to know that she screwed up again. So, yeah, I guess, again, she's not doing a great job selling the fact that she's changed. And I really hope they start to get on these character motivations moving forward, because it is starting to drive me nuts, especially on this rewatch when I was hoping beyond hope that I was missing something the first time around.